Malaysia is uniquely rich in tropical forests, making it one of the most biodiverse countries in the entire world. Malaysia consists of two geographic regions divided by the South China Sea. Malaysian Borneo, located on the northern part of the island of Borneo, and Peninsular Malaysia on the mainland. The tropical forests that have historically covered the peninsula are home to a great wealth of life. These lands host some of the most bizarre and yet incredible creatures. These forests are also home to one of the last remaining subspecies of the world's largest cat, the Malayan tiger. Being Malaysia's national animal and a source of pride, its image can be found throughout society, such as domestic banks, national car companies, and even the national emblem. Though a top predator, tiger populations have seen drastic declines. Approximately 97% of the world's tigers have already been lost within the past 100 years. Subspecies such as the Javan tiger, the Caspian tiger, and the Balinese tiger have already been completely wiped out of existence. And sadly, now the Malayan tiger is also faced with the same threat of extinction. During Malaysia's independence just over 50 years ago, there were an estimated 3,000 wild tigers roaming the forests. But by the early 2000s, only about 500 were left. This sparked the formation of the National Tiger Conservation Action Plan in 2008. Support was considerable, with stakeholders from diverse backgrounds coming together with one united goal: to double the Malayan tiger population from 500 to 1,000 wild tigers by 2020.
We wanted to increase their population, to double their population by 1,000 tigers by the year 2020. Unfortunately, the recent small studies suggest that instead of increasing, they're decreasing.
We think the estimate is about 300 wild tigers, the least 250 wild tigers. So imagining 250 wild tigers living in Peninsular Malaysia is something we should really worry about.
One factor for the continuous decline in tiger numbers is the fact that year 2020 has already been reserved for another, perhaps more important, national goal. Vision 2020, a national policy that all Malaysians are familiar with, aims to build Malaysia into a developed and industrialized country by 2020. This means that there have been huge investments by the Malaysian government in resource extraction industries, as this is viewed to be a necessary step in the direction of development. But what is development when it comes at the expense of wildlife and natural ecosystems that are so crucial for life in Malaysia? What this film is about to show you are the primary threats of protecting the Malayan tiger in the wild, and how this is not just an animal welfare issue, but an issue that transcends into the country's environmental challenges, affects the ongoing social and cultural inequalities, and represents the need for sustainable economic development in this ever-growing tiger economy. When flying into Malaysia, one might expect to look out onto broad virgin jungles, and so it is a little surprising when you see plantations as far as the eye can see. These are oil palm plantations. Palm oil can be found in countless everyday items used in the developed world, such as shampoo, soap, lipstick, ice cream, detergent, chocolate, margarine, cookies, and even peanut butter. The fact that there is such a demand for things that contain palm oil was a good enough reason for the Malaysian government to invest heavily into oil palm plantations throughout the country.
At one time, it was in the early days, clearing for rubber, to replant with rubber and settlements, this thing. And then oil palm came in. Now it's basically for oil palm.
So palm oil is very important now because it has replaced rubber. And why it has replaced rubber? Because it's so much easier to manage.
Between 2000 and 2012, oil palm plantation developments grew about 50%, placing Malaysia as the leading supplier of palm oil to the entire world, of which it has only recently been taken over by Indonesia.
It's one of the core income earners of our country because it contributes so much of our GDP.
There is no doubt that oil palm plantations, along with other land developments such as rubber, have played a major role in Malaysia's steady economic growth and positioning as one of the richest countries in Southeast Asia.
It is something which very hard for us to say, no, we don't want economic development. But the problem here is that we have to do it in a sustainable manner.
Lack of sustainability is not a new topic of criticism for Malaysia. Between 2000 and 2012, while plantations were growing, Malaysia also had the highest rate of deforestation in the entire world. During this time period, Malaysia lost close to 50,000 square kilometers, a size larger than Denmark. This was not good news for animals like the tiger.
One of the major causes of most of the near extinction, or what sometimes in bird we call near threatened rather than the threatened ones, right? Near threatened. It's because of habitat loss.
If you convert the forest into an oil palm plantation or rubber plantation, then the wildlife is inevitably going to be suppressed.
Everybody wants to have a palm oil plantation now. Everybody wants to make the money. But not everybody realizes that they can have palm oil and be responsible to the environment at the same time.
So these are one of the devastating effects it can have on the tiger population, because the whole habitat now is converted into something which doesn't support the tiger population.
Even with the deforestation that has already happened, the transformation of forest to plantation is still being targeted in areas that have some of the most pristine forest cover in the entire country.
They don't see the long-term economic benefit. They see the economic benefits from the short term, where it's always destruction.
This whole race to go into a developed country status is destroying a lot of our natural reserves.
Specifically in Peninsular Malaysia, we have about more than 4 million hectares of permanent forest reserve, so-called permanent forest reserve. But looking at the current situation, permanent forest reserve, they are not safe at all. Other than logging, they do clear felling, total clear felling, where they replace with monoculture, plantation, oil palm. Even though the status of the land remains as forest reserve, but it's no more forest than original forest, then it is not a forest.
Malayan tigers can be found throughout the peninsula, though there are considered to be 3 main tiger landscapes. The main range, stretching north to south, the southern forest in the southeast, and the greater Taman Negara landscape. Of this landscape that tigers could live in, only a fraction are actually considered to be totally protected, and these broad areas can be seen as the priority spaces to which the tiger actually has a fighting chance at survival. But as the demand for natural resources continues, these landscapes are fragmented both by plantations and roads. Building roads is a necessary step for any form of resource extraction, as it allows access for trucks, workers, and others associated with the developments. But as roads are built and the forests are opened up, so too it becomes accessible for one of the tiger's greatest threats to existence: poaching.
As the forest gets cleared, poachers get easier access into deeper forest areas, and it makes it easier for them to poach.
Poaching in Peninsular Malaysia generally is a very big problem, and poaching takes place most often due to outsiders coming into forest, coming into protected areas, even coming into the Taman Negara National Park.
Based on the illegal wildlife trade reports we have, and also information that we collect on the ground, we know that poaching is actually a very serious issue.
One of the most intimidating carnivores on the planet, humans have now become the tiger's unnatural predator and greatest threat, as we are hunting this great animal towards extinction. But for what reason?
All parts of the tiger have been used for various purposes throughout the years. Tiger bones are the most in-demand part of the tiger, and that's always been used in traditional medicine.
There are still superstitious belief of certain people that tigers, they bring in value of medicinal values. So those superstitions are still being believed.
Things like tiger penis have been traded for as aphrodisiacs. Tiger claws and tiger teeth are used as talismans. In some parts of Southeast Asia, even the whiskers and bits of tiger skin, small bits of tiger skin, are used in magic.
The black market for illegal wildlife and wildlife parts is not something to be taken on lightly. Although difficult to obtain reliable figures on the trade, various organizations estimate it to be worth over $19 billion a year, making it the fourth largest illegal global trade after drugs, counterfeiting, and human trafficking.
In fact, the demand has increased, the demand has changed and found new targets in the wild world. And addressing that is going to be very, very difficult in a part of the world where wildlife is generally seen as either a food or a product or very much a part of daily life. It's there for your use.
Sadly, Malaysia has already lost several big mammals due to the illegal trade. Such was the case for the Sumatran rhino, whose population plummeted and approached extinction in the early 2000s as the demand for rhino horn rose in other parts of Asia. As the rhinos began to disappear, the demand and price for other commercially valuable animals, such as the tiger, began to soar. Prices per tiger changed from roughly $500 in 2000 to over $20,000 by 2012. Between this 12-year period, parts of at least 94 tigers were seized, which works out to be about a third of the current population.
You may have been able to take animals out of the wild and plants out of the wild at a point in time where there was an abundance, but this has been done unsustainably over such a long period of time. You can't keep taking the same amount out now without harming the wildlife population.
The consistent availability of tiger parts in the illegal trade and the serious decline in wild tiger numbers demonstrates how conservation enforcement is still insufficient in both tiger range countries and tiger consuming countries. Improving enforcement is crucial to curb these illegal activities and is even proved to work in countries like India. By allocating more funds and training to improve conservation enforcement on the ground, India has seen its Bengal tiger population grow from about 1,700 tigers to over 2,200 tigers within a 5-year period. Unfortunately, Malaysian authorities have not committed sufficient resources to improve enforcement and tackle illegal activities. Strong political will to prioritize tiger conservation enforcement may therefore be much needed. Despite the lack of enforcement, steps have been taken to protect the Malayan tiger's habitat. A plan called the Central Forest Spine Master Plan has been developed, where wildlife corridors are used to connect fragmented landscapes and form a continuous forest for the tigers of Malaysia. There are considered to be 3 corridors that run within tiger landscapes and one that connects the greater Taman Negara to the main range. This is known as the Sungai Wildlife Corridor.
The Sungai Wildlife Corridor is very important for the Central Forest Spine because it allows the wildlife to move from one part of the forest to the other part. It allows them to move from Taman Negara in the east to the main range in the west. And this means that all of the populations of tigers in Taman Negara won't be able to join up with the populations of tigers in the main range.
But this corridor is not protected, not at the moment. And so that is where we've seen more and more forest clearing of late. Although the corridor is in a national policy, it's in the Central Forest Spine Master Plan as primary linkage 1. But we really hope that the state government will take steps towards protecting this corridor.
As important to tigers and other wildlife this forest corridor may be, it is not solely the animals that call this place home. The Orang Asli, which means original people in Malay, have lived in Peninsular Malaysia long before the Indians, the Chinese, and even the Malays. The term Orang Asli is broad and represents many tribes and sub-tribes, yet altogether these indigenous people make up less than 1% of the entire Malaysian population. The tribe within the Sungayu corridor is known as the Batek.
They are traditionally a semi-nomadic community, and they moved around living inside the forest. They're experts in living off the forest. They know how to use a whole range of forest produce for their medicine and to build their homes, and also to make primitive weapons like blowpipes, which allow them to hunt according to their traditional systems.
They are actually lowland people who live at the foothills of the main mountain range. And this is the problem because lowland forests in the peninsula are the most vulnerable. And outside of Taman Negara, I'm not aware of too many sizable tracts of forest that are unbroken. A lot of their beliefs come down to philosophy of there being a natural order in the world, a natural order in terms of relations between society and nature.
And for tribes like the Batek, nature means everything.
Pasal negara saya ini mungkin tak tahan lah. Pasal ini pun saya tengok kesian kayu, tengok kesian tanah, tengok kesian batu. Semua orang ceroboh ni, musnah ni. Saya pun macam saya bodak tu, saya keluar air mata, sedih benda itu, sedih benda ini. Kalau tak ada lah tuan-tuan di dalam bana nak tolong saya, mungkin tak jadilah kita. Mungkin berlaku lah juga.
The forest is their home. The forest is a source of their history. They're constantly looking back and thinking about where ancestors have been, where they can go.
Bila saya suruh tutup ni balak, tuan-tuan pun tolong tutup. Bila saya cakap ni, saya sayang ni, sungai ni kotor ni, orang kerja batu besi atau emas, saya minta tolong tuan-tuan nak tutup, minta tolong tutup lah, pasal seorang ni tak tahu nak tutup. Saya sayang sangat ni bukan pasal lain. Pasal dah adat-adat datuk nenek saya tempat sejuk. Nak pergi sana ada kayu, nak pergi sana ada menatang.
Tidak berani lawan dia. Cuma saya tinggal gitu saya. Jadi saya buat satu peta ini untuk saya nak simpan hutan besar. Hutan besar, kayu adat dan ubat-ubat, jenis makan-makanan dan sarang binatang-binatang. Sebab kalau habis kayu besar-besar dan makan makanan binatang dalam hutan, dia turun tepi kampung, tengok ada tanaman kampung, jadi orang kampung pun tembak dia mati, habis rugi binatang. Tak ada lah.
Preserving their traditional way of life in the forest has come with many modern challenges. In an attempt to limit their mobile livelihoods and assimilate them into modern Malay society, the Malaysian government has built reservations for these indigenous people.
Because the government has more or less forced them to settle down, given them cement, concrete houses, they are restricted in the way of life that they can practice because they need cash every month to pay the bills.
In the reservation assigned to the Batek, it seems they much prefer their own housing and tend to construct right beside the concrete houses.
They would prefer not to be restricted to the reserve because the reserve that's been allocated to them is very small, only a few hundred acres, whereas the traditional roaming area was many thousands of acres.
They feel angry and sad and resentful because it's their home. They've lost burial grounds. They've seen the rivers become polluted. They have seen important trees being plowed under or locked off.
Kita sayang. So, kalau boleh saya nak kawan dari mana-mana semua tolong sokong saya, jangan habis kelayan disapu. Tengok ada kayu banyak.
Dispossession of their traditional land is one of the main issues the Batek and other Orang Asli groups currently face in a developing Malaysia. The land is their source of livelihood and heritage, and so this dispossession has hurt their identity and resulted in an uncertain future. But how is respecting the land rights of these indigenous people related to wildlife conservation?
The Orang Asli and local people generally are crucial to any kind of conservation efforts, because in the long term, the Wildlife Department, the government, cannot have people on the ground all the time to control the poachers and stop poachers coming in. That's just not sustainable. And what they need is to engage with the Orang Asli, to engage with all of the local people to make sure that these local people have an incentive to stop outside poachers from coming in. So if things could be turned around, if they could be given a stake in the future of the land and the future of the wildlife, then there would be added incentive for them to actually manage the wildlife and protect the wildlife and stop outsiders from coming in and destroying the forest and killing all the wildlife.
Why should they care about species that are only of value to some, crazy scientists out there? If it's not their land, if they don't have any land tenure, any security in the place that they're living in, once Orang Asli say, okay, right, this is my forest, then obviously it stands to reason they're going to care a lot more about what is there, or the quality of the ecosystem and so on.
One organization that thinks engaging local communities and everyday people in tiger conservation efforts is the Malaysian Conservation Alliance for Tigers, otherwise known as MICAT. MICAT manages the Citizens Action for Tigers program, which enables volunteers to help conservationists stop poaching and illegal encroachment into the Sungai Wildlife Corridor.
So the whole idea of CAT is to bring people who enjoy the outdoors, who enjoy hiking, to hike in a specific area where we know that poaching is happening. So at the same time, they keep an eye out for snares, for illegal logging, and they report it to the authorities through the wildlife crime hotline that MICAT manages.
Treks through this corridor allow participants to check and install camera traps, examine wildlife markings, and observe the presence of illegal poaching.
Okay, what we have here are markings. They are in Thai script, Thai for Thailand, and these have been placed here by Thai poachers. A lot of the poachers who come down here are from Thailand, and they leave these signs, some of which give you directions to good fresh water, others to perhaps animal species, and others are things pretty much like about how much they miss home and their girlfriends and stuff like that.
Occasionally, even poaching camps are stumbled upon.
So they would have had it tough like that, 5 guys underneath here. Normally when they come in, they seem to come in groups of about 9 to 10 or so, and then they split up, 4, 5, 5, 5.
Certain walks are accompanied by the batek, as they not only know the forest better than anyone else, but also have valuable knowledge about everything that lives within the forest.
So we do engage with them as local guides. So in a way that we are in the forest with them and they are getting paid at the same time. So I think for them it's a good advantage.
Engaging indigenous communities and other everyday Malaysians is vital to stopping illegal encroachment and poaching in the Sungai Wildlife Corridor, which is fundamental to protecting the tiger. But engaging the public in tiger conservation isn't only about protecting the tiger itself, but more about protecting what the tiger represents.
Biologically, if you save tiger, you will save everything else that lives in the same habitat, that share the same habitat as the tiger.
Ecosystem and the wildlife are interdependent, and to ensure that the ecosystem is healthy and can be sustainable over a long time, we need to keep all this wildlife, including tigers.
In order for tigers to stay alive, they need this huge expanse of forest, which means that for Malaysia to give tigers a future, we need to protect these huge areas of forest. And protecting these forests also leads to safeguarding water resources, ecosystem services that we cannot do without. So actually we're saving people. Yeah, not so much only the tiger.
Malaysia must decide which direction it wants to go. Development for short-term economic gains, or sustainable development that won't compromise the natural world. For Malaysia, the tiger is that symbol for sustainable development. Successfully protecting this endangered animal would mean preserving the vast expanses of forest cover, saving countless animals and plant life, safeguarding the traditional lands of an age-old culture, and overall signify the balanced progression of the country's ecology, society, and economy, which is, in essence, the Vision 2020. So the question is, can Malaysia become a model for the developing world as a tiger economy that still has tigers?